Hello and welcome to this Foster Care Institute online training webinar. Social media safety. I'm your host, Dr. John DeGarmo, founder director of the Foster Care Institute. I'm a best-selling author, foster parent, international trainer and speaker, and someone who's cared for over 60 plus children in my home over the years. And this is one topic that is very, very dear to me. Indeed, you and I are living in an online world, but the youth that we care for, the youth that we work with, they inhabit that world. And the world they inhabit, while there are many, many benefits, there are also many, many dangers. Our goal during this webinar is to increase your awareness of cyber safety issues that surround social media safety. We're going to increase your awareness of what digital landscape is and how it impacts youth in the foster care system, as well as all of us, and as well as develop some strategies to promote cyber citizenship and cyber safety. Now, as we know, this is truly a new age of technology, a new age of digital citizenship. If we think back, it's really not been too long since this online world, this new age of technology, has dawned. Indeed, for myself and perhaps you, when I grew up in the 80s and the 1990s, there was really no such thing as digital citizenship because there was no such thing as social media and the internet was not around. So for myself growing up, and perhaps you as well, we did not encounter many of those dangers because it wasn't part of our life, it wasn't part of our world. But as I noted earlier, the youth that we care for, the youth that we work with, the youth in the home, they inhabit that world. So what is digital citizenship? Well, digital citizenship is more than just having the capacity for all of us, staff members, parents, social workers, youth in the foster care system, birth parents, for all of us to use technology. In truth, it is the safe and it is the responsible use of this type of technology and all the forms of communication that go along with digital citizenship, with this digital world. Now, before we go any further, it's important for us to look at some of the rules and the standards that have been put in place by the U.S. government. There is the Broadband Data Improvement Act from 2007 to 2008. And this act amends the Communication Act of 1934, and it requires elementary and secondary schools with computer access to the internet to educate the children and the youth about appropriate online behavior. And this includes any type of online interaction with other individuals in social networking websites. Well, I'm here to tell you that while this Data Improvement Act is in place, very few schools go about trying to educate their minors about online behavior. When it comes to so much testing in today's school systems, when it comes to so many standards that the teachers must adhere to, there really isn't much time for the teachers and the school administrators to educate the youth about appropriate online behavior. In fact, if we think about it, many of the youth that we work with, well, they're learning about their online behavior simply by using online technology, or about what they see their friends and their peers are doing, or by watching videos. In fact, many of these youth are coming from environments or homes where the adult figures in the homes simply are not conscious or aware of the continuing evolution of online technology. So as a result, they are not training or educating their children. The teachers are not training or educating the youth. Now, cyber safety in foster homes is very, very important because it helps to ensure that both the youth in the foster care as well as the staff members are safe. Before I go any further, I truly believe this is the most relevant issue facing foster care today. Because as I said earlier, you and I might live in an online world, but it is the youth that we work with that inhabit this world. They spend pretty much all of their waking time that they have free on some type of digital device. Now, to be sure, there are many, many benefits of social networking and many, many benefits of communication. Our youth today are communicating with online technology. They're talking to each other, they're chatting with each other, they're messaging each other. And when it comes to school, if they're working online, they can message and chat and interact with their teachers. Today's youth need important computer skills in order to survive in a type of career. Now, whatever career might be, they need to have some sort of computer skills. Whether it is ringing up at a register or a computer online prices, whether it is at a restaurant putting in the order, whether it is working at a car automotive place and using the computers to research the problem of the cars. Children need computer skills for their careers. To be sure, click of the button, quick tap on a keyboard, and the world comes to us. In my day, there was the Encyclopedia Britannica, or I would go to the public library and use a Dewey Decimal System when I was doing research. Today's youth are doing their research online, whether it's on a laptop, whether it's on a desktop computer, whether it is on an iPad, whether it is on a phone, whatever it might be, they're doing their research for school online. And all the resources they need for school generally are online as well. So, why do youth in foster care use online technology? Well, let's look at that. Today, our kids are living online. They're networking with others online, whether it's friends in the general area where they might live or people across the globe that they might never have heard before. They are networking with them. Many youth play games online, a lot of online gaming. In fact, online gaming is becoming more and more popular. They're chatting with each other through chat boards or messages. Again, whether they're friends or people across the globe. They're watching movies, streaming movies online, and listening to music online. So you can clearly see here that youth in foster care use online technology for pretty much every aspect of their life when they had the free time. I mentioned earlier many youth chat online. Who does it and why? Why do youth, or perhaps why do you chat? Why do we do it? We all do it. Well, let's look at that. A Nielsen study on texting found that the average person texts 3,417 texts per month. You might think that that is a very large number. But if it's broken down per waking hour over the course of a month, it is only on average 7 texts per hour. And we all know that today's youth, perhaps even yourself, many times will send more than 7 text messages per hour when we're awake. So why do we do that? Well, many of us believe it's faster to get in contact with somebody that way. It's easier, and some say it is more fun. As we mentioned here at the Foster Care Institute, the teens in foster care undergo a great deal of trauma being placed into a foster care system, being placed into a foster care home, being placed into a residential type setting, being placed at where you work. All of the control they've had in their life has been stripped of them. They have had no control being removed from their home. They've had no control being removed from their mothers and their fathers, perhaps even their siblings. No control being removed, perhaps even from their schools and their churches they might go to. They have no control being placed in the environment where they are now at. The only control they feel they have is online. Because when the youth in foster care go online, this is how they're able to fully, in their mind, express themselves. They can go on there and share maybe how afraid they are, how concerned they are, how angry they are, or how upset they are, or perhaps all of those feelings and more about being placed into a foster care system and being placed into the residential environment. This is where youth in foster care feel they truly have control. And that is with their online life, with their online persona. Make no mistake, there are many dangers associated with online technology and social media in today's world. We're going to briefly examine some of the many, many dangers that our youth that we work with and the youth that we care for face daily online. Now, every month, 300 to 500 girls in the state that I live in, Georgia, are sexually exploited online. 300 to 500 girls are exploited every month online, just in that state alone. This state's generally at around the age of 12. Now, for those girls or for those children who are exploited online, generally they have a history of sexual abuse, prior sexual abuse, before being exploited online. Generally, they have been neglected or abused. Generally, they have a history of some sort of physical or sexual violence committed against them. Now, does this sound like children in foster care? History of prior sexual abuse, neglected, abused, abandoned perhaps? When I was young, and perhaps you were as well, I was told never take candy from a stranger, never get into the car with somebody I do not know, because that could be dangerous. Well, today's world, we don't know who the dangers are. We don't know who those predators are because they're acting behind a keyboard. But generally, the sexual predators today are non Hispanic white males. Generally, they're older than 25 years of age and they're acting by themselves. And in most cases, where a male is a victim, the male is also an offender. So if a boy in foster care or a teenage youth in foster care who's a male is exploited online, he's most likely being exploited by another male offender. It's very difficult to spot who today's predators online are. These predators sound nice. They want to have a conversation with the youth in private. They ask for their personal information, and many times they already know things about their victim, things about the youth that you're working with when they're forming a relationship with them online, because they've done their due diligence, they've done their research, they've been stalking them, if you will. These predators ask a lot of questions, and when they're talking with their intended victim, they often agree with them as they stalk them online. And many times these predators also will monitor their victims' online usage, their online activities. In addition, these predators often stalk not only the child, but their child's family and their friends. And they try to make that person feel very, very special. The predator, though, in truth wants to see their victim in a very, very vulnerable state. So they try to turn their victim against other people. And they make up stories sometimes that don't make sense. Now, the predators will often offer their victims gifts, and also they will ask for pictures or maybe even request a video chat with their victim, a victim that they've been grooming all this time. Sometimes the online predator will make their victim very, very uncomfortable or ask uncomfortable comments. And they might ask their victim to lie to their friends, to lie to their family members, to lie to staff members. And they're doing so because they're trying to pressure their victim the youth that you're working with, to meet in person. While they do that, they might threaten that victim as well. All the while, they're going to try to make the victim, the youth that you're working with, think that what they're doing is very, very normal. And all of this comes from ICDL Arabia. You can find all this online. Simply type in ICDL Arabia for much more on this, and we thank them for that. Now let's look at child pornography. 20,000 images of child pornography are posted online each week. There are more than 3 million images of child pornography online. 10,000 websites offer child pornography. And you're thinking to yourself, how can this be? This is not legal. Yes, but it's very accessible online on the dark web. Indeed, child pornography is one of the fastest growing internet business. Let me say that again. Child pornography is one of the fastest growing internet online businesses. So, what does the victim look like? Well, the victim profile, girls are targeted at twice the rate of boys. So, the girls that you were working with at the facility, the home, are more likely to be the victims of online pornography. Generally, they're ages between the ages of 13 to 15 years of age, those early teen years. These young girls feel that they are in love or they are seeking close relationships with others online. Now, to be sure, youth in foster care many times go online. They go on social media looking for them. They're looking for acceptance. They're looking for relationships, and they're looking for something that's lacking in their life, the feeling of being loved. They might feel they're not loved by their family members, their parents. They may feel they're not loved by the staff members or perhaps others that you're working with. They may feel they're not loved by therapists or counselors or others in their life. So they go online looking for that sense of love. And the predators recognize that, and that's how they lure them in with all that we talked about earlier. Revenge porn is taking off in popularity as well. Revenge porn is a form of sexual abuse that involves the distribution of nude or sexually explicit pictures or maybe even videos of someone without their consent. Now, this revenge porn can be done perhaps by some of the youth that you're working with against another teenager their age. Perhaps the girl in the home that you're working at has had a prior relationship where she broke up with somebody and she wishes to get back, if you will, at that former boyfriend. She might use revenge porn. Our predators can also use revenge porn, the distribution of nude or sexually explicit pictures, in order to blackmail, if you will, their victim. Now, with today's technology, it's quite easy to track somebody. We, as a society, can track people through pictures online, through our phones and our emails. In fact, if you go to peeku.com and type in your own information, you might be surprised at what comes up. We mentioned grooming earlier. Grooming is something where predators will develop a relationship to lure somebody in. In addition, they might use their victim to bring in others, other friends, or maybe other young siblings. When I was a young lad, many, many years ago in the late 70s and early 80s, I would often write notes. Perhaps you did the same thing. We would pass notes back and forth in school. This was our form of flirting, if you will. Today's form of flirting is sexting. A recent study found that 20% of cell phone using teens have received some sort of sexually suggestive message or nude pictures of someone they knew via a text message, which means most likely some of the youth that you're working with at the facility or the home have received a sexually naked picture. 5% of teenagers admit to having sent one of these pictures or messages. That's admit. So it's quite likely that more than 5% of our teens have sent one. In fact, I would suggest to you that that number is much greater. They're just afraid to admit it. Now, there are three main scenarios for sexting. These include, first, the exchange of an image solely between two people. Second, an exchange between partners who have shared with others outside of their relationship. In other words, perhaps a teenage boy has a naked picture of a girl, a girlfriend of his or a former girlfriend of his, and he's sharing it with others, maybe his friends outside of that romantic relationship. And third, there is exchange between two people. They're not yet in a relationship, where at least one hopes to be. This is what our teenagers are doing. These teenage girls who are desperate for some sort of romantic love, if you will, they're sharing a naked picture with somebody else, hoping to be in a relationship with that person. Today's form of bullying is much, much more aggressive than it was when you and I were young. It is cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is when youth use technology to bully their friends. They can do it via email. They can do it through chat rooms or social network sites. They can do it through text messages and cell phones. Now, cyberbullying is something that can happen 24 hours a day. Because as long as the victim has online device, perhaps even their phone, they can be bullied every time they look at that phone. Now, how does this happen? Well, cyberbullying might be where a teenager publicly discloses someone else's private email or information. They might send threatening or aggressive messages via text or email. They might spread rumors about somebody online. They might cut somebody out, if you will, from their list. They might block their emails. They might try to trick or fool or mislead somebody online or through texts and messages. They might even break into someone else's email or messages to send cruel or false messages as that person. Maybe they create a website to make fun of another individual. And this is something that can be done quite easily and even free. Because you can create, and we can create websites quite easily if we know what we're doing with no financial connection to it whatsoever. It is free to create some websites. We might use a website to rate a person in a cruel fashion, or maybe even body shame them in some way. Now, boys are much more apt to send messages of sexual nature. Boys are more apt to post harmful pictures or videos, and boys are more apt to threaten somebody with physical harm online. Girls will spread rumors online. Girls will send messages that make fun of somebody else online. And they might exclude others or tell some secrets of people online as well. Indeed, research shows that 10 to 20% of youth have been targeted online or are the aggressors. It peaks in the middle school, and girls are more likely to target others than boys. Research also shows the more time people spend on Facebook and Instagram and social media, the more they compare themselves socially. Now, this social comparison is linked, among other things, to low self esteem, as well as higher social anxiety. And this comes to us from the National University of Singapore. Indeed, in this post COVID world, we are seeing a tremendous increase in higher social anxiety and low self esteem in today's youth. And that goes along with the fact that they were spending much of their time online on social media in 2020 and 2021 when, as society, we closed down the schools. Where did those youth go? They went online. Today's gangs and hate groups and terrorist groups can also recruit their newest members online as well. For those youth in foster care who simply want to belong, they want a sense of group, they want a sense of belonging, they want a sense of connection, Many of them will fall into a recruitment scam, if you will, and join a gang or join a hate group, maybe even a terrorist group through online and social media. Today's youth also can have access to many inappropriate sites. Today's youth can learn how to create bombs or purchase guns online. They can learn how to manufacture drugs online. They can purchase alcohol, legal, illegal drugs, and even weapons online. Today's youth also often fall for internet hoaxes that are online, hoaxes that are through emails and social media, including the Nigerian hoax, the foreign lottery one, the secret shopper, the work at home, and one that youth in foster care often fall victim to is the family member in distress, where they might get an email or perhaps a message online from someone claiming to be a member of their family who's asking for help. But what they're really asking for is money, or perhaps even worse. YouTube is the third most popular site in the world today. 51 different languages are online on YouTube. 60 hours are uploaded on YouTube every single minute. Now, YouTube is owned in part by Google, and Google is able to know what we watch and what we search by what we type in. Many times, youth in foster care are placing videos online on YouTube, and these videos have location trackers. We've mentioned social media quite a bit here. Social media, anytime someone clicks on a like, they like something on social media, well, they're sharing information with Google and with others. Information that is gathered just when we click on the site. Online gaming is something that is very, very popular today. Indeed, it's quite addictive. Now, when youth are playing online games, often today they are exposed to pornographic and sexual games or sexual sites while they're playing online. Smartphone apps, over a million apps are downloaded every single minute. Every single month. Think about that. Smart apps are downloaded over a million times each month. Perhaps you have downloaded some apps on your phone as well. Did you know this? 60% of data is siphoned, if you will, to invisible or unknown third parties. Every time you download an app, there's a 60% chance they're going to siphon your information and sell it to a third party where they create a detailed profile about you. Social media addiction, social media platforms drive surges of dopamine to the brain. They do this to keep their consumers, the youth, perhaps even yourself, coming back over and over and over again. This is why we see our youth on their phones constantly, because of the drive and the surge in dopamine to the brain. It's an addiction of sorts. The shares, the likes, the comments on these platforms, and these social media platforms, they trigger the brain's reward center, which results in a high, if you will, similar to the one people feel when they're gambling or using drugs. To continue, the overuse of social media can actually rewire a young child or a teen's brain to constantly seek out immediate gratification, which leads to obsessive, compulsive, and addictive behaviors. This is what can make mental health disorders such as anxiety, depression, ADHD, and body dysphoria worse. And we thank Nancy DeAngelis for these comments through her research. Well, let's look at social media addiction even further. Teens, teens that we're working with, the youth that we're working with, who use social media from a very young age are much more greater risk or more danger developing these disorders and future addictive behaviors. So why do youth in foster care and social media, why is this such a danger, or why should this be a concern for us? Well, we've looked at some of the dangers: the cyber bullying, the sexting, the predators, the addiction, the mental health issues. To be sure, this is very, very difficult for staff members such as yourself and social workers to monitor, on a minute by minute basis, hour by hour basis, day by day basis, week by week basis. In addition, sometimes the birth parents can contact their child through social media and online technology without anybody knowing it, without yourself, other staff members, supervisors, social workers knowing it. In fact, this communication between the birth parent and the child is often not monitored. As a result, false promises might be made. False promises to the youth that you're coming home soon. False promises such as, you'll be coming home for Christmas, I will see you for your birthday, etc. There may be some false accusations. False accusations made against the facility. False accusations made against the staff members. False accusations made against you or the director from birth parents. Sometimes the birth parents may set up meetings between their child and themselves at a location, again, that's not supervised or monitored, because the communication online is, again, not monitored. And there are those times where the youth that you're working with might have access to inappropriate material or information on the birth parent's social media page. Inappropriate materials that might be harmful, whether physically or emotionally or mentally, for the youth. Sometimes the birth parents might spy on their child, their teen, maybe the foster parents they previously worked with, or maybe even the residential home. Birth parents can harass former foster parents. In fact, the rate of stalking of birth parents who are stalking the carers for their child, carers such as yourself, well, this rate has increased drastically over the years. And if you're working with reunification between the youth and the family, well, this type of stalking can hurt that relationship. There are many, many laws and responsibilities in place when it comes to online technology, social media, and our youth that we work with. In fact, caseworkers and staff members such as yourself should stay up to date with federal and state laws. Staff have the responsibility of protecting the teens and the youth. Now you're thinking to yourself, I do not have time to stay up to date with any federal and state laws. And to be sure, that's very likely true. Let's look at some of these laws, if you will. The CIPA, the Children's Internet Protection Act, is a federal law enacted by Congress to address concerns about offensive content over the internet. Perhaps you're familiar with FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. FERPA is a federal law that protects the privacy of student records and information. This law applies to all schools that receive funds under an applicable program from the U.S. Department of Education. There's COPA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. This gives parents control over the information websites can collect from their children. But as you can imagine, many parents are not familiar with this or do not know how to go about this or process this. When it comes to protecting our youth that we work with online, it truly starts from their very, very early ages. Those early grades, those early years, children have more protection in place in school, but still need training. The children need to be trained at a very, very early age on how to protect themselves. As the teen ages, there are less protective measures in place. Therefore, the child needs more sophisticated cyber training each year to apply to his or her daily interactions. We talked earlier, in fact, at the beginning of this webinar, how there is a law in place where schools and educators are instructed to teach and educate children and youth about online technology. We also know that's not being done in most schools. Therefore, once again, it is up to us to train or educate the youth that we're working with on how to stay safe online. And it begins with this. It begins with netiquette. Netiquette. Netiquette is the social code of network communication, the social and moral code of the internet based on the human condition and golden rule of netiquette, a philosophy of effective internet communication that utilizes common conventions and norms as a guide for rules and standards. That sounds very, very good, but what does that mean? That is a dictionary definition of netiquette. What does it really mean? Well, let's look at what it means. Netiquette is the practice of good manners, being polite, helpful, being kind, not aggressive, being mindful of the fact that others might see things differently than oneself. That's what etiquette is, and we know this. Netiquette is etiquette for the internet. Netiquette is being polite to others online. It's so much more important on the internet because there are no facial cues. There's no body language to help you and I and the users understand the people we're communicating with because there's no face-to-face meetings. Therefore, when we need to teach our youth that when they're online, they need to use good manners. Be kind, be helpful, be polite. Don't be aggressive. Recognize that somebody could have a different opinion or different belief than ourselves. As we work with youth in high school, we must ensure that they demand caution while online because there's many dangers associated with it. We need to help them set standards while they are online. We need to teach them the legal implications of their behavior online. Because as they may be sexting, we need to teach them that that could be a sex crime. If they are 18 years of age or older and they are sending a sexually explicit picture or video, sexting, as we called it earlier, which is very, very common, if they're 18 years of age and they're sending a picture of somebody who is younger and they're caught, they could become a registered sexual predator. Now, who is teaching them that? Who is telling them that? Most likely, nobody. It's up to us. It's up to you and I to teach the youth that we're working with the legal implications of their behavior. Because if they are sexting and they are caught and they're over 18 years of age and they become a registered sexual predator, well, most likely they're going to have a very difficult time finding a job or career afterwards because they are now a registered sexual predator. They're going to have a difficult time getting into the military, difficult time getting into a trade school or a college. We need to teach them the legal implications of the behavior and demand caution. Tell them daily to be careful online. In addition, we need to help them them maintain a healthy balance. A balance between online technology and social media and being off the device, playing outside, interacting with others without using online devices, going for walks, playing card games or board games, cooking together, playing sports, working on puzzles, things, activities offline. But they need to be taught by you because they are inhabiting this online world and they need you to help them come off that world. Help them enter into a world that is not online. Help them to maintain that healthy balance, which will certainly help them with their mental health, with their self-esteem. Again, we need to help them demand caution and set standards and teach them the legal implications of their behavior. If they're doing this online, well, what might be the legal result? And help them develop coping strategies when they are experiencing high levels of stress, high levels of anxieties because of their online use, because of their social media. We saw earlier that many youth experience higher levels of anxiety and lower self esteem because of their online technology and social media use. And we've seen that increase since 2020 and 2021. So, again, we need to help them maintain a healthy balance by developing coping strategies for their stress and their anxiety. And we have several webinars here at the Foster Care Institute where you can learn skills to help the youth with their stress, with their anxiety. And I would encourage you to watch those webinars. It's up to you to set up guidelines that the youth can have, guidelines for online use, guidelines for being online, guidelines for being using the phone before they get on. And it's up to you to discuss those dangers. Train our youth how to create healthy, positive profiles online. Indeed, perhaps you might consider helping the youth that you're working with create two different profiles. One profile that's private, where they can interact with their friends and family members and those dears, perhaps former foster parents, perhaps therapists or counselors, perhaps previous caseworkers, and a public pseudonym, a public image, a public profile where they can go online and talk to others about how they might feel or vent, if you will, or just surf the web, if you will. Train our youth. It is up to you to train our youth how to disclose their information, their personal information, and to express themselves. Today's youth, like so many people online, are quick to go online and express every single emotion they're feeling at every single minute. It's up to people like you to train those teenagers by saying things like this. I know you're upset. Perhaps we need to have a 24-hour period before we go online and discuss how we're feeling. Or if you have nothing nice to say about that person, say nothing at all. Train our youth to disclose or express how we're feeling or personal information online in a positive and healthy and safe fashion. It's up to us, it's up to you and me to train our youth to recognize that when we put pictures online, well, they become part of a global village, and people can track where we are through what we post online. So it's important that we train our youth in the foster care system not to put pictures online because they can be tracked. Pictures that do not have geographic identifiers. When we're working with youth in foster care system, it's important for us as foster parents or caseworkers or staff members to be able to access what our youth are putting online to ensure their safety. And you might be saying, Dr. John, I don't want to invade the child's privacy. I'm here to tell you you're here to protect the youth. It's also important that youth in foster care, while they are in the foster care system, do not put personal information online, birthdays, or where they might be going to school, because again, this can be tracked while they are in the foster care system. So many youth are eager to meet a person they've been chatting with online. But as we saw earlier, many times those people they're talking to online are sexual predators, forming a relationship over a period of time, perhaps weeks or even months, as they lure that person in with false hopes, false promises. And then that predator asks to meet that person online. You need to teach the youth that you're working with never meet someone face to face that you've never met in person. If somebody reaches out to the youth and says, "Hey, I want to meet you at such and such a place and such a time," it's important for us who work with youth to talk to the teenagers about the dangers associated with this. I said earlier, I was told as a youth, and perhaps you were as well, don't take candy from strangers, don't get into a car with someone you don't know. Well, today that translates with never meet someone face to face that you've been talking to online unless adults are around. In addition, we need to teach the youth that we're working with not to believe everything online. Wikipedia is something that's very, very popular. Wikipedia is also something that you and I and others can go and change and exploit. Anybody can say anything online, and many times it's completely false. It's important for you to teach your youth that you're working with not to believe everything online. In addition, it's important for us to know who the teens that we're working with are talking to online. We need to know who their contacts are and to watch for suspicious contacts. Because as you and I are having this conversation right now, as you're watching this webinar and I'm talking to you and presenting this information to you, it's very likely that a predator right now is reaching out to somebody in the home that you work at, to somebody that you are helping. Right now, it's very likely that a predator is filling up one of the teens or the youth at the home you're working with, filling their mind with false hopes, false promises. It's very likely that somebody is sending messages or videos or pictures of somebody online that you're working with. So we need to daily focus on protecting our youth online. Because if you do not do it, who will? There is so much in this webinar, so much information, all designed to protect youth in foster care. I encourage you to revisit this webinar in a few months to remind yourself, because this is something, as I said earlier, is the most relevant issue facing foster care today because our children inhabit that world. For much more on this, visit the Foster Care Institute at drjohndegarmofostercare.com. I'm often posting information about it myself at Dr. John DeGarmo of the Foster Care Institute on Facebook, as well as on Twitter. If you have questions about this webinar or anything else I can help you with, please contact me at drjohndegarmo@gmail.com. We do a deep, deep dive into all of this of the book Keeping Foster Children Safe Online. It's a book that I encourage you to read cover to cover, not only for the children you're working with, but if you have children of your own, this is a book that's going to be important for you as a parent. And we have many books at the Foster Care Institute. I'm sure there's one there for you today. Hey, thank you so much for taking part in this webinar. Thank you for watching it, and thank you for protecting youth in foster care. For the Foster Care Institute, I'm Dr. John DeGarmo.